The woman was horrified to discover that white downy hair had grown on her waist. Then she noticed that she had grown a white beard. Even more bizarrely, her teeth had become much sharper. All the signs pointed to the woman undergoing a transformation. However, she had no time to figure out what was happening because her mischievous son had covered the whole family in paint. Seeing her son covered in paint, running toward the bedroom, the woman was so scared she rushed after him, but she suddenly slipped on the paint and fell hard. The woman felt an excruciating pain where the fur had grown. When she checked the mirror again, she discovered that the fur had turned into a large abscess. She then prepared to pierce it with a needle, but to her surprise, she pulled out something resembling a tail. However, she still believed she had a skin condition and did not realize the severity of the issue until one day, while shopping at the supermarket, she suddenly noticed her sense of smell had become exceptionally sensitive. She could identify the ingredients in food just by smelling them. Later, when she took her child to the park, she was surrounded by a group of dogs. Strangely, she seemed to understand the dog's language. That night, the woman was suddenly awakened by a noise. However, as soon as she stepped outside, she was stunned. There were hundreds of dogs at her doorstep. Just as she was feeling overwhelmed with sympathy, the dogs suddenly began to tear at her viciously. The next day, she didn't notice anything unusual. She just felt like she had had a dream. But then her son suddenly came back from the door with a dead rat. The woman panicked and went out to check. To her surprise, there were piles of dead animals at the door. She remembered what had happened the night before. The woman was completely panicked. Had she really mutated into a dog? Later, the woman took her son to a restaurant to eat. But suddenly, she couldn't control herself and threw down her knife and fork to start gnawing on the food, like a starving dog, occasionally letting out a few dog barks. Seeing the strange looks from others, the woman finally regained her senses. However, the days that followed were even more bizarre. One day, the woman was about to take a shower. She discovered 2 rows of protrusions on her abdomen, resembling those of a female dog. But the woman had no time to think about it. Her husband had finally managed to come home early today to take care of the child. Yet she was just taking a shower, and her husband kept complaining. First he said he couldn't find the formula. Then he said the child's diaper needed changing. The woman erupted in anger at her husband. Since the child was born, the man had never once taken care of the child. After finishing her shower, the woman discovered that her husband was engrossed in playing video games and hadn't looked after the child at all. She tore her husband to pieces, but soon she was snapped back to her senses. After all, she still had to put the child to sleep. Finally, after the child fell asleep, the woman could no longer suppress the restlessness in her heart. She ran into the garden and vented her emotions wildly. This time, she truly seemed to have turned into a dog. She sniffed the scent of nature carefully, smelling the traces left by her own kind. She couldn't help but start digging a hole. Next, the woman tore off her clothes, ready to fully release her true nature. She was already covered in fur, and the next moment, the woman had truly transformed into a husky. At that moment, she had shed all her stress, cast aside all her worries, and ran freely through the streets. Afterward, she returned home as if nothing had happened, washing off the mud. After a night of venting, the woman was no longer depressed like before. She even found a more enjoyable way to take care of her child. The 2 of them ate together in a dog bowl. She even put her son in the doghouse to sleep. After her son fell asleep, she transformed into a husky once again.